The ancient Apache burial ground stood silent under the desert moon, its sacred stones casting long shadows across the sand. Her arrival shattered that peace. A young woman, barely conscious, dragging herself to the ceremonial center. Blood trailed behind her like crimson tears. When Nighthawk found her, the tribal elder's granddaughter was clutching something to her chest, her once white dress now stained dark with more than just desert dust. "I'm not pure anymore," she whispered, eyes filled with both defiance and shame. Nighthawk, sworn protector of the sacred grounds, reached for the blood-soaked cloth wrapped around her torso. What dark secret could drive someone to desecrate hallowed ground? As he pulled back the fabric, his breath caught in his throat. What he saw changed everything. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Dawn broke over the mesa as Nighthawk completed his morning prayer. The eagle feather in his hand caught the first light, its barbs separating the sun's rays into dancing shadows. 45 winters had etched lines around his eyes, each one earned through vigilance and service to the people. As guardian of the ancestral grounds, he lived apart from the main encampment, a solitude that suited the quiet warrior. Nighthawk tucked the sacred feather into his leather pouch. The woman's appearance last night troubled his dream. Morning Sky had always been respectful of tradition, unlike some who returned from the white man's schools. What would drive Chief Running Bear's granddaughter to violate sacred law? He built a small fire and placed cedar on the coals, wafting the purifying smoke over his body. The wound he'd discovered beneath her bloodied clothes wasn't what he expected. No bullet or knife slash from a settler's attack, but precise markings, ritual markings, carved into her flesh. Nighthawk gathered herbs from his dwelling, yarrow for bleeding, sage for cleansing, willow bark for pain. The woman slept fitfully on his sleeping mat, her fever climbing through the night. He had cleaned her wounds as best he could, applying a poultice of crushed herbs. The symbols carved into her skin matched no pattern he recognized, yet seemed hauntingly familiar. "Water," she murmured, eyes fluttering open. He held a clay cup to her lips. "Why did you come to the burial grounds, Morning Sky? You know it's forbidden except during ceremonies." She drank deeply before answering. "I had to. The vision showed me." Her eyes, usually bright with intelligence, seemed distant. "Grandfather wouldn't understand. Chief Running Bear will be searching for you. You can't tell him." Her hand gripped his wrist with surprising strength. "Not yet. Promise me." Nighthawk frowned. His loyalty to the chief was unwavering. For 20 winters, he had served as both warrior and advisor. "The people have lost so much," she continued. "Our lands shrink. Our children forget the old ways. I've seen what's coming, Nighthawk." "What did you see?" "Destruction." The word hung between them. "Unless the blood price is paid." Before he could question her further, a distant call echoed across the rocks. "Search parties. They would find her trail soon enough." "I need 3 days," Morning Sky whispered. "By the full moon. If I haven't finished by then, all is lost." Nighthawk stood, conflicted. His oath as guardian bound him to report violations of sacred land, yet something in her eyes, certainty mixed with fear, gave him pause. He moved to the entrance of his dwelling, looking toward the tribal lands. Riders approached, including Strong Arrow, Morning Sky's betrothed from the neighboring band. The proud warrior had arrived early for their marriage ceremony, scheduled for the next full moon. "What have you done to yourself?" Nighthawk asked, turning back to her. "What was necessary?" She closed her eyes. The old ones spoke of this, the joining of enemy blood with friend, impurity becoming purity. Nighthawk gathered his weapons. He would join the search, guide them away from his dwelling, buy time to understand what ancient knowledge drove this woman to such desperate act. As he stepped outside, his hand brushed the carved stone pipe his father had given him. 4 generations it had passed through his family, used only in the most sacred councils. Whatever Morning Sky had discovered Whatever vision drove her to self-mutilation would need to be brought before the elders. But first, he needed to understand the markings on her skin. Markings that in his dreams, last night, had seemed to glow with their own inner fire. Nighthawk slipped the stone pipe into his belt. Today he would search with the others, feigning ignorance. Tonight he would study the ancient pictographs in the hidden canyon, symbols passed down through generations, recording prophecies only the guardians were permitted to know. If Morning Sky spoke true, the survival of the people hung in the balance, and somehow the key lay etched in blood upon her skin. Morning Sky remembered her first day returning from the mission school. 5 summers ago, she had stepped from the wagon, wearing a high-collared dress, her long hair pinned severely atop her head. The people stared, children hiding behind their mothers' skirts. Only her grandfather, Chief Running Bear, had embraced her without hesitation. "You bring new knowledge to strengthen us," he had said, pressing his forehead to hers in blessing. Now she lay in Nighthawk's dwelling, the pain of her self-inflicted wounds throbbing beneath the poultice. She hadn't expected the Guardian to find her so quickly. The ritual required solitude, completion under the sacred stones, but the blood loss had weakened her more than anticipated. She fingered the worn leather journal hidden in her dress pocket. The diary had belonged to Sister Mary Catherine, a missionary who'd lived among the Apache 40 years earlier. The nun had recorded tribal stories, including prophecies the elders share only in fragments. Prophecies about the time of great change. Morning Sky had found the journal 3 moons ago, while helping Dr. Harrison organize his library at the fort. The aging physician had been kind to her, teaching medical skills beyond tribal knowledge. He never suspected she sought information about both worlds, the white man's science and her people's ancient wisdom. The journal entries described a ritual of purification when all else failed, a blood sacrifice from one who bridged worlds, combined with the essence of both ancient enemy and friend. Outside, voices approached. Morning Sky tucked the journal deeper into her pocket. Nighthawk had joined the search parties, but others might come. She forced herself to stand, ignoring the tearing pain across her ribs, where the ritual markings ran deepest. Through the dwelling entrance, she glimpsed riders circling the mesa. Strong Arrow led them, his tall figure unmistakable even at a distance. Their marriage, arranged since childhood, would join 2 powerful Apache bands. He was handsome, capable, and utterly devoted to the old ways. He would never understand what she had learned. That the old ways themselves spoke of necessary change, of blood mixing that their people now forbade. Morning Sky sank back onto the sleeping mat, recalling the day Strong Arrow had visited her grandfather's lodge. He had presented Chief Running Bear with a magnificent deerskin vest, hand-decorated with hundreds of dyed porcupine quills, forming intricate patterns. "For the father of my bride," he had announced proudly. The vest had hung in her grandfather's lodge ever since, symbol of the alliance to come. An alliance that would now never happen if she completed the ritual. Morning Sky reached into her dress, past the journal, and withdrew a small object wrapped in soft rabbit fur. She unwound the covering, revealing a tarnished silver medallion on a leather cord. The medallion, Spanish in origin, had been carried by her grandmother, taken from a slain enemy generations ago. On its face, an eagle clutched arrows in one talon, an olive branch in the other. 2 paths, she whispered, tracing the worn design. War or peace, death or life. The vision had come to her during the last new moon. While gathering herbs in the hidden canyon, she had touched the ancient wall paintings and collapsed in a seizure of images. The people scattered, their lodges burning, children crying as they were taken away to schools where their hair was cut, their language forbidden, and behind it all, a darkness spreading across the land, swallowing everything in its path. Unless the blood ritual was completed, unless enemy became friend, and friend became family. Nighthawk's dwelling contained little weapons, herbs, sleeping mat, But on a small shelf carved into the wall sat a clay bowl painted with symbols of the Guardian lineage. Morning Sky studied it, recognizing patterns that matched fragments in Sister Mary Catherine's journal. Could Nighthawk be part of the prophecy? The Guardian bloodlines were kept secret, passed from father to son with sacred knowledge. She clutched the medallion tighter. 3 more days, until the full moon. 3 days to convince the stern Guardian to help complete the ritual. 3 days to save her people from what was coming. From outside came the thunder of hooves approaching. Morning Sky slipped the medallion back into hiding. Whether friend or foe arrived, she would need all her strength for what lay ahead. Nighthawk circled back toward his dwelling as the search party moved westward. Strong Arrow had been reluctant to split up, his dark eyes narrowing with suspicion when Nighthawk suggested they cover more ground separately. The warrior from the neighboring band carried himself with the confidence of one used to being obeyed. His betrothal to Morning Sky cemented an alliance. Chief Running Bear considered essential for their people's survival. She would not wander off alone, Strong Arrow had insisted, adjusting the bone-handled knife at his belt. Something has happened to her. If only he knew how right he was, Nighthawk thought, dismounting and approaching his dwelling cautiously. The sun had climbed high, baking the red earth. No tracks around his home beyond his own. He had been careful to brush away Morning Sky's blood trail before joining the search. Inside he found her sitting upright, more alert than he expected. She had rewrapped her wounds with fresh cloth. "They're looking for you," he said without preamble. "Did you tell them?" "Not yet." Nighthawk knelt beside her, checking her fever with the back of his hand. "Cooler now. You owe me an explanation before I decide what to do." Morning Sky nodded slowly. "Help me stand." He supported her as she rose. Her face tightening against pain, she motioned toward his medicine pouch hanging on the wall. "Bring that." Nighthawk retrieved the finely worked leather bag. Inside were his most potent medicines, collected through years of training under the previous Guardian. Morning Sky reached in, fingers searching until she found a small stone bowl no larger than a child's palm. She turned it over, revealing symbols etched around its base. "Do you know what these mean?" she asked. "Sacred patterns, for preparing medicine during the healing ceremonies." "Look closer." She traced one symbol, a spiral surrounded by rays. "This is the sign of the great change, passed down through generations of medicine people. And this," her finger moved to a series of interconnected lines, "represents the weaving of bloodlines." Nighthawk took the bowl, studying the markings he had seen hundreds of times, yet never fully understood. The previous Guardian had taught him their use without explaining all their meanings. "Where did you learn this?" he asked. Instead of answering, she withdrew the leather journal from her dress. "Sister Mary Catherine lived among our people before either of us was born. She recorded stories the elders told, stories they no longer share with the young." Nighthawk accepted the journal reluctantly. The words of a white woman meant little compared to the oral traditions of the people, yet as he skimmed the faded pages, phrases leaped out: blood ritual, time of great darkness, the joining that brings renewal. "This speaks of what is carved on your skin," he said finally. "Yes." Morning Sky sank back to the sleeping mat. "The vision came to me in the hidden canyon. I saw our people's future, Nighthawk. Children torn from families, lands taken, language and ways forgotten." Her voice strengthened. "But I also saw how it might be prevented. Through blood sacrifice. This is dangerous medicine, Morning Sky. Such practices were abandoned generations ago, because we forgot their purpose." She took back the journal. "The ritual must be completed. By the full moon. It requires the blood of ancient enemy and friend united." Her eyes met his. "That's why I cannot marry Strong Arrow." Nighthawk stared at her. "What does your marriage have to do with this prophecy?" Before she could answer, a cry sounded from outside. They froze as footsteps approached. "Nighthawk, are you there, brother?" Grey Wolf, one of the tribal scouts. Nighthawk motioned for Morning Sky to stay silent as he stepped outside. The young scout was breathless. "Riders from the fort," Grey Wolf reported. "Captain Davis and soldiers." They crossed onto our lands at dawn. Did they say why? A settler family was attacked 2 days' ride north. They blame our people. Grey Wolf's expression darkened. The chief asks for you. Nighthawk nodded. I'll come. As Grey Wolf departed, Nighthawk ducked back inside. I must go. I'll be here when you return, Morning Sky said. But remember, 3 days after that, it will be too late. Nighthawk gathered his weapons, mind racing. Soldiers on tribal lands meant trouble, possibly bloodshed if hotheads on either side prevailed. And now this talk of prophecies and blood rituals. As he mounted his horse, the small stone bowl tucked safely in his pouch seemed to grow heavier against his side. Chief Running Bear's lodge stood at the center of the encampment, its entrance facing east toward the rising sun. As Nighthawk approached, he noted the horses tied nearby. Not just the chief's council, but the military horses with their distinctive government brands. Captain Davis had indeed come himself. Nighthawk ducked through the entrance. Inside, the lodge was dim after the bright afternoon sun. Chief Running Bear sat straight-backed despite his 70 winters, his face impassive as Captain Davis spoke. The officer's blue uniform was dusty from the ride, but his bearing remained formal. Lieutenant Reynolds stood behind him, a younger man whose hand never strayed far from his holstered pistol. Nighthawk, the chief acknowledged. We were speaking of the attack on the Parker homestead. 3 dead, Captain Davis added grimly, including a child. Nighthawk took his place in the circle. Our hunters have been to the east, not north, where the Parker place lies. We had no part in this. Tracks were followed to the edge of your territory, Lieutenant Reynolds said, his tone making it clear he had already reached his conclusion. Many passed through these lands, Grey Wolf countered from across the circle. Comanche, settlers, even your own deserters. Captain Davis held up a weathered brass button that gleamed dully in the lodge's dim light. This was found at the sea. Apache work. I've seen such things traded at the fort. Nighthawk studied the button. A stylized thunderbird had been etched into its surface, the craftsmanship distinctive. This came from our people, he admitted. But that doesn't mean my granddaughter is Miss. Chief Running Bear interrupted, his voice carrying the weight of both leader and worried family member. Since yesterday, now I hear of attacks where our crafts are found. Strong Arrow leaned forward. I say she was taken by the same ones who killed the settlers, to cast blame on us. Nighthawk felt the weight of his knowledge, Morning Sky safe in his dwelling, pressing against his conscience. The oath of a guardian was to protect the people. Did that mean revealing her secret now, or honoring her request for time? We found no sign of struggle in her lodge, he said carefully. No tracks of strangers. You think she wandered off alone? Strong Arrow challenged. When our marriage ceremony approaches, she would not dishonor her family so. Captain Davis cleared his throat. Chief, with respect, I need to know if we face renegades from your band or another threat entirely. The fort commander expects answers. And justice, Lieutenant Reynolds added pointedly. Chief Running Bear's lined face revealed nothing of his thoughts. He had led the people through 30 difficult years of broken treaties and shrinking territories. Each decision balanced survival against honor, present needs against future hopes. 3 days, the old chief said finally. Give us 3 days to find those responsible. If we cannot, then you may return with more soldiers, and we will not resist your search. Captain Davis frowned. The commander won't like delay. 3 days for the truth, or generations of bloodshed from rushing to judgment. Chief Running Bear met the captain's gaze steadily. Choose wisely. After a moment Davis nodded. 3 days. But I'll leave Lieutenant Reynolds and 4 men to observe. When the council ended, Nighthawk moved to follow the departing officers, but the chief's hand on his arm stopped him. Stay, Running Bear commanded. When they were alone, he withdrew a small rawhide bag from his robe. My granddaughter visited me the night before she disappeared. She asked strange questions about the old stories. The chief opened the bag and removed a curved bear claw, yellowed with age. A thin copper wire wrapped its base, and symbols had been etched along its length. This belonged to my grandfather, who had the seeing power. Morning Sky asked about it specifically. Running Bear's eyes narrowed. What do you know that you're not telling me, Guardian? Nighthawk hesitated, his loyalty to the chief warred with Morning Sky's warning. I will find your granddaughter, he promised. But I ask for the same 3 days you requested from the captain. You know where she is. It wasn't a question. I know she is safe, Nighthawk admitted, and that she believes she acts to protect the people. Running Bear studied him, wisdom accumulated through decades of leadership, assessing the Guardian's words. Finally, he pressed the bear claw into Nighthawk's hand. 3 days, the chief said. Then you bring her to me, whatever secrets she carries. Nighthawk closed his fingers around the ancient talisman, feeling its power thrumming against his palm like a distant heartbeat. I will. As he left the lodge, Strong Arrow stepped from the shadow. You found her trail, the warrior stated, his voice cold with certainty. I see it in your face. I follow several possibilities, Nighthawk replied carefully. When I find her first, Strong Arrow said, moving closer until they stood chest to chest, we will see what the chief thinks of a guardian who keeps secrets. Night had fallen by the time Nighthawk returned to his dwelling. The bear claw hung from a leather cord around his neck, hidden beneath his shirt. He approached cautiously, alert for any sign that Strong Arrow had followed or that Morning Sky had been discovered. She was waiting. Her condition improved enough that she sat cross-legged on the earthen floor. Sister Mary Catherine's journal open before her. A small fire cast flickering shadows across the wall. The soldiers came about a settler family killed to the north, Nighthawk said, setting down his weapons. They found APACHE work at the scene. Morning Sky looked up sharply. The Parker family, with the red-haired children. You know them? Dr. Harrison took me there once. Miss Parker was expecting her 3rd child. A shadow crossed her face. Who would do such a thing? Nighthawk described the council meeting, the 3-day agreement, and Strong Arrow's suspicions. Your grandfather knows I'm hiding something. He gave me this. He withdrew the bear claw talisman, said you asked about it before you disappeared. Morning Sky reached for it, reverently. May I? He placed it in her palm. She traced the copper wire wrapping, then the etched symbols along its length. My great-grandfather had visions, she said, like mine in the hidden canyon. They called him mad until his prophecies began coming true. What exactly did you see in your vision, Morning Sky? She closed her eyes, reliving the moment. Darkness spreading across our lands. Children torn from mothers, our language and ways dying. But before that, blood, much blood. Her eyes opened, haunted. I saw a massacre that begins with the Parker family and ends with our people blamed and hunted down. The attack has already happened, Nighthawk pointed out grimly. Yes, that means we have even less time. She stood, wincing slightly at the pain from her wounds. We must go to the hidden canyon tonight. Now, the search parties will not look there. It's taboo for all but guardians. She gathered the journal and a small bundle of her belongings. The next part of the ritual must be performed where the ancient ones left their markings. Nighthawk hesitated. The hidden canyon was sacred ground, its walls covered with paintings thousands of years old. Only guardians and those they trained were permitted to enter. What ritual did you perform on yourself? He asked, eyeing the bandages visible beneath her dress. The first marking, the symbol of one who stands between worlds. She touched her side where the deepest cuts lay. The journal says the blood must flow freely, mixing with earth from sacred ground. And the second part requires the ancient cave. And you, Nighthawk frowned. I've sworn no part in this, yet here you are, wearing the bear claw of seers. Morning Sky stepped closer. The guardian bloodlines have always had 2 purposes: to protect sacred knowledge and to act when that knowledge demands it. The certainty in her voice gave him pause. There was power in her words, reminiscent of the elders when they spoke of matters beyond everyday understanding. I'll take you to the canyon, he decided, but I promise nothing more until I see these markings myself. They slipped out under moonlight, taking a narrow trail that wound behind Nighthawk's dwelling and up into the higher cliffs. The path was treacherous in darkness, but both knew it well. Nighthawk from his guardian duties, Morning Sky from childhood explorations with her grandfather. After an hour of careful climbing, they reached a seemingly solid rock face. Nighthawk pressed specific spots in sequence, and a narrow opening appeared, a crevice just wide enough for one person to pass sideways. "Wait," Morning Sky whispered, withdrawing something from her bundle. It was a clay lamp, small enough to fit in her herm. She lit it with a coal from the small fire pouch Nighthawk carried. The lamp's soft glow revealed symbols painted around its rim, the same spiral pattern found on Nighthawk's medicine bowl. "Where did you get this?" he asked, surprised. "It was buried beneath my mother's sleeping place. I found it as a child, but kept it secret." Her eyes reflected the tiny flame. "When I returned from the White School, I recognized the symbols matched those in the hidden canyon." Nighthawk studied the lamp with new respect. Such ritual objects were rare, most destroyed or hidden when the people were forced to move repeatedly by the army. "This lamp has been waiting," Morning Sky said simply, "like the prophecy, like us." She stepped through the crevice, lamp held high. Nighthawk followed, ducking his head beneath the low stone ceiling. The passage twisted several times before opening into a cathedral-like space. The lamp's glow couldn't reach the ceiling, but it illuminated the nearest wall covered in red, white, and black figures, painted by hands long turned to dust. Morning Sky moved unerringly toward the back wall. "Here," she said, raising the lamp. Nighthawk's breath caught. Before them, stretched across the living rock, was an intricate scene, figures with spiral markings on their torsos, arms raised toward a circle, representing the sun. Below them, a line of figures lay prone, the dead, and at the center, two figures stood back to back, a line connecting their hearts. The same pattern carved into Morning Sky's flesh. Nighthawk traced the ancient paintings with reverent fingers. "I've studied these walls for 20 years, he murmured. "Yet I never understood this scene, because you weren't meant to until now." Morning Sky set her lamp on a stone ledge. "The previous guardian, did he speak of the joining ritual?" "He mentioned it only as forbidden knowledge. Said some traditions were abandoned because they demanded too high a price." Morning Sky nodded, opening Sister Mary Catherine's journal. "The nun recorded what our elders would not speak of openly. Listen," she read by lamplight. "The eldest among them speaks of a ritual from before the Spanish came. When great danger threatens the people, two must join, one who walks between worlds, one who carries guardian blood. Their sacrifice creates a shield that turns aside destruction." Nighthawk frowned. "Sacrifice? You mean death?" "No, a different kind of sacrifice." Morning Sky hesitated. "The giving of blood, yes. But also the giving of purity." Understanding dawned. "When you said you weren't pure anymore, the first part of the ritual required me to mark myself with the symbols of protection." She touched her bandaged side. "The second requires joining with one of guardian blood, a union that would be forbidden in ordinary times." Nighthawk stepped back. "You're betrothed to Strong Arrow. That's why I cannot complete the marriage ceremony. The ritual must be finished first." Her eyes held his steadily. "And you are the last of the true guardian bloodline." The implications hung between them in the lamplit darkness. Nighthawk turned away, studying the ancient paintings to avoid her gaze. The figures on the wall seemed to move in the flickering light, their arms reaching, pleading. "How can you be certain," he asked finally, "that your vision was true, that this ritual would change anything?" Morning Sky approached a different section of wall and pointed to a series of concentric circles. "Do you know what this represents?" "Time, the passing of seasons." "Yes, and here." She moved to another panel showing figures fleeing before what appeared to be a great storm. "This depicts the time of the great sickness when many of our people died. Before that happened, the last joining ritual was attempted. It failed. The guardian refused his role, She turned to face him. 3 moons later, smallpox came. Half our people died. Nighthawk's thoughts raced. The stories of the great sickness had been passed down, how it had devastated the tribe, killed the strongest warriors, the wisest elders. But nothing in those stories mentioned a failed ritual. "I need proof," he said. "Something beyond paintings and a white woman's writings." Morning Sky reached into her dress and withdrew a folded piece of buckskin, yellowed with age. "My grandfather keeps this hidden in his sacred bundle. Borrowed it before I left." Nighthawk accepted the buckskin with trepidation. Unfolded, it revealed a message written in the pictographic language of their people. The symbols were aided but recognizable, a record kept by a tribal historian. He read slowly, translating the ancient language in his mind. The account described a time of danger, a guardian named Tall Reed, and a woman called Between Worlds. Their union had been foretold to save the people from a coming darkness. But Tall Reed had refused, believing the old ways should remain buried. The woman completed her markings alone and died from her wounds. Moon upon moon later, the white man's sickness came. Nighthawk refolded the buckskin carefully. "This proves only that the story existed, not that the ritual would have worked." "Faith requires uncertainty," Morning Sky replied. "If we knew for certain, it wouldn't be faith." From outside the hidden canyon came a distant sound, voices calling. The search parties had moved into the high country. "Strong Arbon leads them," Nighthawk said, listening intently. "He tracks well. We have until dawn before they could find this place," Morning Sky calculated. She gathered her lamp and journal. "There's a deeper chamber where we'll be safer." Nighthawk collected the bear claw talisman, which he had removed to examine the wall paintings. As he lifted it, something clattered to the stone floor, a small object that had been wedged in the copper wire wrapping, hidden until his handling dislodged it. He knelt, finding a stone disc no larger than his thumbnail. One side was polished smooth, the other bore a carving of 2 intertwined figures surrounded by flames. "What is this?" he asked, showing Morning Sky. Her eyes widened. "The token of consent. The histories say it was given to the guardian by the chief when the joining ritual was approved." She looked at him with renewed hope. "Your guardian passed it to you through the bear claw, or it was hidden there long ago and forgotten. There are no coincidences in matters of prophecy." Morning Sky's voice gained strength. "Your former guardian knew, my grandfather knows. They've been preparing for this moment across generations." Nighthawk stared at the tiny stone disc in his palm. If she was right, then his entire life, his training, his position as guardian, had been leading to this moment of decision. "The deeper chamber," he said finally, pocketing the disc. "Show me." Dawn broke over the mesa as Lieutenant Reynolds surveyed the boundary stones marking Apache territory. The ancient markers, weathered granite slabs etched with symbols, stood like silent sentinels. His 4 soldiers waited behind him, horses stamping impatiently in the early morning light. "Sir, we're still on reservation land," Private Jennings reminded him nervously. "I'm aware, Private." Reynolds adjusted his cavalry hat. "Captain Davis may be content to wait 3 days, but I'm not. 2 more settler families live within a day's ride of where the Parkers were killed." He had never trusted the peace agreement. His father had fought Apaches in the campaigns 10 years earlier, returned with stories of their savagery and cunning. Now Reynolds watched as Strong Arrow and 3 warriors approached from the east, returning from their night's search. "Any sign of the woman?" Reynolds called out. Strong Arrow reined in his horse, his face impassive. "Not yet." "Curious timing," Reynolds mused. "A chief's granddaughter vanishes the same day settlers are massacred." Strong Arrow's eyes narrowed. Morning Sky would never harm whites. She lived among them. Perhaps that's why she disappeared. Divided loyalties. Reynolds smiled thinly. "My men and I will search the high country. Captain's orders." "The agreement was 3 days before your soldiers could search our lands," Strong Arrow countered. Reynolds patted his sidearm. I'm modifying the agreement. For a moment, tension crackled between them. Then Strong Arrow nodded once. We will search together. I don't need a guide, yet you will have one. Strong Arrow's tone made it clear this wasn't a suggestion. These lands hold dangers white men don't understand. Miles away, deep in the hidden canyon, Morning Sky knelt before a natural stone altar in the inner chamber. Nighthawk watched as she unwrapped a bundle containing objects gathered for the ritual: the clay lamp, a silver medallion, a handful of red ochre, and a deerskin pouch filled with herbs. The chamber walls displayed different paintings from the outer canyon, more intimate scenes of tribal life, births and passages. One section showed what appeared to be a ceremonial union, a man and woman surrounded by flames yet unburned. The joining ritual was once common, Morning Sky explained, arranging her items. When the people faced drought, enemy attacks, or sickness, the guardian would unite with one who walked between worlds, and this saved the tribe. Not always, but the histories say that without these rituals, the Apache would have vanished generations ago. She mixed ochre with water from a small pottery canteen. The Spanish, the Mexicans, the Americans all tried to destroy us, yet we remain. Nighthawk crouched beside her, studying the mixture she prepared. You truly believe this will prevent what you saw in your vision? I believe it's our only chance. She looked up at him. The storm is already beginning. The Parker family, the button at the scene with Apache design. Someone wants our people blamed. Strong Arrow suspects you were taken against your will, Nighthawk said. He searches with Lieutenant Reynolds now. Morning Sky's hand froze mid-motion. Reynolds? Not Captain Davis? The captain returned to the fort, left Reynolds and 4 men behind. This is worse than I feared. She set down the ochre mixture. In my vision it was a young officer with yellow hair who fired the first shot. I saw him standing over dead children. Ours, not white children. Nighthawk frowned. Reynolds has yellow hair. We have less time than I thought. Morning Sky stood, wincing at her partially healed wounds. The ritual must be completed today. You're still weakened from the first marking. It doesn't matter. Her voice took on a new urgency. Nighthawk, I've asked much of you already. Now I must ask for your complete trust. From her dress pocket she withdrew a flat, polished piece of obsidian. In the dim lamplight, the black volcanic glass reflected their faces like a dark mirror. The Seeing Stone, Nighthawk whispered, recognizing the sacred object. Where did you get this? It was with my mother's things. She was keeper of the women's medicine before she died. Morning Sky held the obsidian between them. Look into it. See what I've seen. Nighthawk hesitated. The Seeing Stone was powerful medicine, known to reveal truths hidden from ordinary sight. Some who looked into its depths were driven mad by what they witnessed. I need you to understand, Morning Sky urged. Not just believe, but know. Slowly, Nighthawk took the obsidian. Its surface felt unnaturally warm against his palm. He stared into its depths, at first seeing only their reflections wavering in the lamplight. Then the stone seemed to darken, its surface becoming a window rather than a mirror. Images formed, blurry at first. Then with terrifying clarity, soldiers surrounding an Apache encampment, rifles firing, lodges burning, women and children cut down as they fled. Among the dead he recognized faces: Grey Wolf, Chief Running Bear, children he had watched grow from infants. And standing amid the carnage, Lieutenant Reynolds giving orders as his men reloaded. The vision shifted, showing Morning Sky's ceremonial union with Strong Arrow, followed within days by the massacre. Then it changed again, showing the ritual completed with Nighthawk instead, followed by Reynolds' men turning back from the boundary stones, a great storm driving the May. 2 paths, 2 futures. The obsidian went dark, and Nighthawk found himself gasping, sweat beading on his forehead, despite the chamber's coolness. Now you understand, Morning Sky said softly. He nodded, unable to speak as the horror of what he'd witnessed still echoed in his mind. We begin at midday, she told him, taking back the Seeing Stone. When the sun stands directly overhead, Chief Running Bear sat alone in his lodge, rolling a smooth wooden cylinder between his palms. The message stick was ancient, its surface worn by generations of hands before his carved symbols spiraled along its length. The tribal history condensed into patterns only chiefs and guardians were taught to read. He had not shown this to the council. Some knowledge was too dangerous to share widely, preserved instead through carefully chosen successors. His thoughts turned to his granddaughter, missing now for 2 days. Morning Sky had always been different, curious about the old ways even while learning new ones at the white school. She found the pattern, he murmured to himself. As I feared she might. A shadow fell across the lodge entrance. Grey Wolf ducked inside, his young face tense with news. Strong Arrow rides with the soldiers now. They search the high country near the Guardian's dwelling. Running Bear nodded, unsurprised. And Nighthawk, still missing the search parties yesterday but never returned to the encampment. Grey Wolf hesitated. Some warriors whisper that he has betrayed us, taken your granddaughter to the whites. Nighthawk is loyal to our people. Then where is he when we face soldiers on our land? The chief studied the young scout. Sometimes loyalty requires actions others cannot understand. He held up the message stick. Do you know what this tells? Grey Wolf shook his head. Only that it holds the oldest stories. It speaks of cycles, of times when the people stood at the edge of destruction, and what was required to turn aside that fate. Running Bear set the stick on the ground between them. Find 2 ravens. Tell him I require his counsel, then return to watching the soldiers. After Grey Wolf departed, the chief remained motionless, listening to the wind outside. 2 ravens was the eldest of the medicine people, keeper of songs, so old some believed they predated the Apache themselves. Soon the old medicine man arrived, stooped with age, but with eyes still sharp. He glanced at the message stick and nodded gravely. So it has begun, 2 ravens said, lowering himself carefully to sit across from the chief. My granddaughter found the hidden journal. She connected what should have remained separated. Running Bear's face showed the conflict within him. And Nighthawk is exactly where he must be. 2 ravens finished. This was foretold when you were still a boy, Running Bear, when the guardian spirit hawk flew 3 times around your father's funeral pyre. I never believed it would happen in my lifetime. 2 ravens reached into his medicine pouch and withdrew an object wrapped in soft rabbit fur. Unwrapped, it revealed a pipe carved from red stone, its bowl shaped like a coiled serpent. The vision pipe, Running Bear whispered, recognizing the sacred object rarely seen outside the most important ceremonies, smoked by chiefs and medicine people when great decisions must be made. 2 ravens began filling the pipe with a mixture from a separate pouch. The people stand at a crossing path. One leads to survival, one to ending. You believe my granddaughter's vision is true. I believe the old ones do not lie. 2 ravens struck a spark to light the pipe. The joining ritual has been forbidden for 3 generations, because its power frightened even our own elders. But there are times when old taboos must yield to greater needs. The chief watched as 2 ravens drew deeply from the pipe, then passed it to him. The smoke was sweet and pungent, different from the tobacco traded at the fort. This was the sacred mixture, harvested from plants that grew only in hidden valleys, prepared with prayers and songs. Running Bear inhaled, feeling the smoke fill his lungs. His vision blurred slightly as the pipe's medicine took hold. What should I do? He asked. Strong Arrow will feel betrayed. The council will question my judgment for allowing this. You already know what must be done. 2 ravens gestured toward the lodge entrance. Why else did you send your fastest runner to the fort this morning with a message for Captain Davis? Running Bear nodded. It was true. He had sent word asking the captain to return, hoping to keep Lieutenant Reynolds in check until matters with his granddaughter were resolved. I cannot openly approve what they do, the chief said. The people are not ready to remember such old ways. You don't need to approve, only to not interfere. 2 ravens took back the pipe. The guardian and the bridge-walker must complete their task alone, as it has always been. Outside, a commotion arose, voices raised in alarm. Grey Wolf burst into the lodge, breathless. Strong Arrow has found something in the high rocks, he reported. Blood on stones near the hidden canyon. He believes Morning Sky was taken there. Running Bear exchanged a glance with two ravens, the hidden canyon's sacred space where the ancient ones had left their marks. He demands warriors join him, Grey Wolf continued. Says the soldiers are getting too close to sacred ground. The chief rose. Decision made. Tell Strong Arrow I will speak with him myself. No warriors are to approach the hidden canyon. And the soldiers? Running Bear clutched the message stick, feeling the weight of his responsibility to both present and future generations. Let them come, he said. What will happen must happen in its own way now. The midday sun beat down on the narrow entrance to the hidden canyon. Morning Sky had prepared everything for the ritual, the ochre paint mixed with sacred herbs, the ceremonial blanket spread on the smooth stone floor, the clay lamp positioned to cast light on the ancient wall paintings. Nighthawk watched as she meticulously recreated the patterns shown in the images, her movements deliberate despite the pain from her self-inflicted wounds. He had spent the morning in meditation, clearing his mind for what was to come. It's almost time, she said, glancing at the shaft of sunlight that penetrated the chamber through a narrow fissure in the rock ceiling. When it struck a particular stone at the chamber's center, the sun would be directly overhead. Before we begin, Nighthawk said, there's something I must know. He held up the small stone token he had found in the bear claw wrapping. If this ritual is so important, why wasn't I told of my role before now? Morning Sky paused in her preparation. The previous guardian, your teacher, believed you weren't ready to accept such responsibility, that you might reject the old ways as superstition, and my bloodline. He told me nothing of its significance. Because of what happened before you were born. Morning Sky sat beside him. You've never spoken of your parents. Nighthawk's jaw tightened. They died when I was an infant. A fever that swept through the camp. That's what you were told. She reached for her bundle and withdrew an object wrapped in faded red cloth. This belongs to you by right. I found it hidden among my grandfather's sacred items. He unwrapped the cloth, revealing a small wooden box carved with intricate symbols. Inside lay a leather cord from which hung a small silver disc, not Apache work, but something older. Turned over, it bore a name scratched in English, Thomas Hawkins. What is this? Nighthawk demanded, though a cold certainty was already forming in his mind. Your father's. Morning Sky replied softly. He was a captive taken as a child, raised among our people. He became a guardian, the first outsider blood ever accepted into that lineage. Nighthawk stared at the silver identification disc. An American? Yes, and your mother was daughter to the previous chief. My grandfather's cousin. Their union was controversial. Morning Sky's voice grew gentler. They didn't die of fever, Nighthawk. They were killed by those who believed they had violated tribal law by mixing bloodlines. The revelation struck like a physical blow. Nighthawk's entire understanding of his heritage, his place within the tribe, shifted beneath him like sand. Who killed them? He asked, his voice dangerously quiet. Strong Arrow's father led those who opposed the union. They claimed to act for the good of the people. Morning Sky touched his arm. My grandfather protected you afterward, placing you with the guardian who raised you. Why tell me this now? Because you need to understand why the ritual must be with you. She took the silver disc, turning it in the light. You already carry mixed blood, guardian and outsider joined as one. It's why the previous guardian selected you despite the controversy. Why my grandfather allowed it. Nighthawk's mind raced through memories, subtle comments from elders, the way certain families had always kept their distance. Strong Arrow's barely concealed contempt, signs he had attributed to his status as guardian, a position that often inspired both respect and wariness. Strong Arrow knows this. His father told him. It's why he was so insistent on our marriage, to cement his position and erase the shame of his father's actions. Morning Sky replaced the silver disc in its box. The ritual needs one who walks between worlds. I've lived in both Apache and white society, and it needs one of guardian blood, but not pure blood. Mixed blood, like yours. So everything, my training, your education, our positions within the tribe, was preparation for this moment. The scope of the deception stunned him. Not everything, but the possibility was preserved. Morning Sky looked up as the shaft of sunlight crept closer to the center stone. Our ancestors saw further than we imagine. Nighthawk clenched the silver disc in his fist. Anger competed with a strange sense of rightness, as if puzzle pieces long misaligned had finally found their proper places. A sound from the canyon entrance interrupted his thoughts. Voices echoed against stone walls, searchers drawing close. Strong Arrow, Morning Sky whispered, recognizing the cadence. And others, "We've run out of time." Nighthawk tucked the silver disc inside his shirt. How much of the ritual remains undone? The joining itself and the final markings on both of us. She gestured to the mixed ochre paint. We must complete it before they find this chamber. The shaft of sunlight touched the center stone, illuminating the red-painted figures on the wall behind them. The moment had arrived. Nighthawk made his decision. He removed his shirt, revealing the lean, muscled torso of a lifetime warrior. "Show me what must be done." Strong Arrow stood at the mouth of the narrow crevice, his hand resting on his knife hilt. The blood trail had led here, droplets dried to rust brown on pale stone. Behind him, Lieutenant Reynolds and 2 soldiers waited impatiently. "Well?" Reynolds demanded. "Is this the place?" "It is sacred ground," Strong Arrow replied. "The hidden canyon, only guardians may enter." Reynolds snorted. "Convenient hiding place for your missing woman, then. If Nighthawk has brought her here, he violates our most sacred laws." Strong Arrow's face remained impassive, but his eyes burned with controlled fury. "Laws, superstitions, it makes no difference to me." Reynolds nodded to his men. "Jenkins, Roberts, secure the entrance. No one leaves without my permission." Strong Arrow stepped forward, blocking the crevice. "You will not enter. This place is forbidden to outsiders. I have orders to find whoever killed the Parker family." Reynolds moved to his holstered pistol. "Step aside." For a tense moment, neither man moved. Then a voice called from down the trail, "Lieutenant Reynolds." They turned to see Captain Davis approaching, with Chief Running Bear and several tribal elders. The captain looked displeased, dust coating his uniform from a hard ride. "Captain," Reynolds saluted stiffly, "I've tracked suspicious signs to this location. Blood trail, leading to a hidden cave." Davis glanced at the chief. "Is this true?" Running Bear nodded gravely. "Blood has been spilled on sacred ground. This concerns our people. We will handle it." "With respect, sir," Reynolds interjected, "if this is connected to the Parker murders." "I've just come from the fort," Davis interrupted. "New evidence has been found. The Parker attack appears to be the work of renegade Comanche, not Apache." Reynolds frowned. "What evidence?" "A trading post owner 20 miles north recognized items stolen from the Parker homestead. The sellers were Comanche." Davis turned to Chief Running Bear. "I apologize for the intrusion on your lands. Will withdraw as agreed." "The blood trail," Reynolds began, "is a tribal matter." Davis finished firmly. "Mount up, Lieutenant." "That's an order." As the soldiers prepared to depart, Strong Arrow remained at the crevice entrance, his expression unreadable. Chief Running Bear approached him. "You will come with us as well," the chief said quietly. "Morning Sky is my betrothed," Strong Arrow countered. "If she's in there, then it is still not your place to enter." Running Bear's authority filled his voice. "The council awaits. There are matters you must hear before actions are taken." Reluctantly, Strong Arrow followed the chief down the trail, casting one final look at the narrow entrance to the hidden canyon. Back at the tribal encampment, the elders gathered in the council lodge. At its center burned a small fire, and beside it sat a clay water vessel decorated with intricate patterns. 2 ravens, the old medicine man, dipped a wooden ladle into the vessel and offered it first to Chief Running Bear, who drank deeply before passing it around the circle. Strong Arrow accepted the ladle when his turn came, but hesitated before drinking. "What is this ceremony?" "Purification," 2 ravens answered. "Before truth is spoken." Something in the old man's tone made Strong Arrow examine the water vessel more closely. The designs painted on its surface were not merely decorative, but symbolic, and among them he recognized the spiral pattern that appeared on Morning Sky's ceremonial dress. He sniffed the water suspiciously. This is drug. It contains only what is needed for clear vision. Two ravens replied calmly, "Drink or leave the council. Those are your choices." Strong Arrow glanced around the circle. The faces of the elders revealed nothing, but their silence spoke volumes. Slowly he raised the ladle to his lips and drank. The water tasted strange, bitter yet sweet, with hints of herbs he couldn't identify. Almost immediately his vision sharpened, colors becoming more vivid while sounds seemed to recede. "Now we may speak truth," Chief Running Bear began. "About Nighthawk, about my granddaughter, and about you, Strong Arrow, son of Black Knife." Strong Arrow stiffened at his father's name. "My father was a great warrior who protected our traditions. Your father led those who murdered Nighthawk's parents," the chief stated bluntly. "Not for any crime, but because Nighthawk's father carried white blood." Murmurs circulated among the younger council members who hadn't known this history. Strong Arrow's face darkened. "If this is true, my father acted to keep our bloodlines pure," he defended, "as I have sought to do by joining with your granddaughter." Two ravens spoke next, his aged voice carrying surprising strength. "What you call purity is a recent idea, not our ancient way." He gestured to the water vessel. "The designs here tell our true history. The Apache have survived because we absorbed the strength of others, captured children raised as our own, women taken from enemy tribes, alliances formed through marriage." "Lies," Strong Arrow hissed, though doubt flickered in his eyes as the ceremonial water worked through his system, making denial harder to maintain. "Truth," corrected Running Bear. He withdrew from his robe a small object, an arrowhead fashioned from bone, yellowed with age. "Do you recognize this design?" Strong Arrow studied the distinctive notching pattern along the arrowhead's edge. His breath caught. "It is the mark of my father's line." "Yes. And it was found in a grave dating before our people came to these lands." Running Bear placed the arrowhead in Strong Arrow's palm. "Your ancestors were not Apache, Strong Arrow. They were enemies we defeated generations ago. Your family line was absorbed into our tribe through the very mixing of blood you condemn." In the inner chamber of the hidden canyon, Morning Sky applied the last of the ritual markings to Nighthawk's chest. The red ochre paint formed intricate patterns that matched the ancient wall painting's spirals, zigzag lines, and symbols representing the union of opposing forces. Her touch was gentle yet precise, each mark placed with reverent care. "The stories say these symbols connect us to the ancestors," she explained, her voice soft in the chamber's stillness. "They watch now, guiding our hand." Nighthawk remained motionless, aware of the significance of each symbol being drawn on his skin. The revelations about his parentage still resonated within him, not just the shock of learning his true heritage, but the strange sense of completion it brought. He had always felt caught between worlds, never fully belonging. Now he understood why. "Is it painful?" Morning Sky asked, noticing his expression. "Not the markings," he answered. "The truth." She nodded, understanding. "Truth often hurts before it heals." Her fingers traced a final line connecting a symbol over his heart to one on his shoulder. "It's done." Nighthawk examined her work, noting how the patterns on his chest mirrored those carved into Morning Sky's skin days earlier. "What now?" Instead of answering, she reached for a folded blanket nearby. As she shook it open, he recognized the distinctive weaving pattern. Not the standard tribal designs, but something older and rarer. "A two-spirit blanket," he said, surprised. These ceremonial blankets were used in sacred healing rituals, representing the balance of masculine and feminine energies. "It belonged to my great-grandmother," Morning Sky confirmed, spreading it on the smooth stone floor. She was a healer who walked between worlds, not just Apache and white, but between seen and unseen realms. The blanket's intricate design told a story through symbols woven in natural dyes, indigo, ochre, and deep crimson. At its center, two figures stood back to back, surrounded by protective symbols. Morning Sky knelt on the blanket, wincing slightly from her healing wounds. The ritual requires more than just the markings. It calls for a true joining body and spirit. Nighthawk hesitated. Despite all he had learned, despite the vision in the obsidian stone showing the consequences of failure, this final step gave him pause. You're betrothed to Strong Arrow. That path leads to destruction. She held out her hand. I've seen it. You've seen it. If we do this, there's no returning to what was before. There is no returning regardless, she said simply. The only question is whether our people have a future. Outside, the canyon had gone quiet. The searchers had departed, at least for now. But Nighthawk knew they would return. Strong Arrow would not easily surrender his claim, especially once he learned what had transpired here. Nighthawk knelt across from Morning Sky on the blanket. The ochre designs on their bodies seemed to pulse in the lamplight, creating the illusion that the symbols were alive, breathing with them. I never thought my path would lead here, he admitted. Nor I. Her eyes met his. But now that we're here, I find I don't regret it. There was honesty in her voice, and something more. Throughout their lives they had moved in different circles despite both holding respected positions within the tribe. Morning Sky, the educated granddaughter, being prepared for leadership. Nighthawk, the solitary guardian, keeping ancient knowledge. Their paths had rarely crossed until now. Yet as he looked at her, Nighthawk realized there had always been a connection between them. Unacknowledged, perhaps even unrecognized, but real nonetheless. The ritual doesn't specify what form the joining must take, Morning Sky said, as if reading his thoughts. Only that it must be genuine, a true union of spirits. She took his hands in hers. Where their skin touched, the ochre patterns connected, creating new designs between them. The lamp flickered, casting shifting shadows across the chamber walls. Outside, thunder rumbled in the distance, strange, since the sky had been clear that morning. A storm comes, Nighthawk observed. It's beginning, Morning Sky whispered. The signs align, their foreheads touched, and Nighthawk felt something shift within him, a barrier dissolving, a connection forming that transcended physical touch. The ochre markings seemed to warm against his skin. Morning Sky began to sing softly. An ancient melody he recognized from ceremonial gatherings, but with words he'd never heard before. Her voice filled the chamber, echoing off stone walls painted thousands of years earlier by ancestors who had perhaps performed this same ritual. Nighthawk found himself joining her song, the words somehow known to him, though he had never learned them. Their voices twined together as their hands remained linked, the painted symbols now seeming to glow within a light. Outside, the storm grew stronger. Rain began to fall, its rhythmic patter on stone accompanying their ancient song. Lighting flashed, momentarily illuminating the chamber through the narrow ceiling fissure. In that brief, electric light, Nighthawk saw not just Morning Sky before him, but a succession of couples stretching back through time, guardians and bridgewalkers who had performed this ritual in times of greatest need, joining to create a shield of protection around their people. And he understood at last. This was not just about preventing a massacre or saving their tribe from immediate threat. It was about weaving a new strand into the fabric of their people's survival, one that embraced change while honoring tradition, that found strength in difference rather than fearing it. As their song reached its crescendo, the two-spirit blanket beneath them seemed to pulse with energy, its woven symbols resonating with those painted on their bodies. Morning Sky leaned forward, and their lips met in a kiss that sealed their union. Guardian and bridgewalker joined as the ritual demanded. The storm raged through the afternoon, sheets of rain transforming dry arroyos into rushing streams. At Fort Davis, Captain Miller watched from his office window as soldiers scrambled to secure equipment in the parade ground. "Damn strange weather," he muttered. "Clear skies this morning now this." Lieutenant Reynolds stood dripping on the office carpet, having just returned from Apache territory. His uniform was mud-splattered, his expression sour. "Report," Miller ordered, turning from the window. "Nothing conclusive, sir. We tracked signs to a canyon the Indians consider sacred." Reynolds removed his sodden hat. "Chief Running Bear intervened before we could investigate further." Miller nodded, gesturing to a chair. "Sit. There's been a development." As Reynolds took a seat, Miller unlocked his desk drawer and withdrew a distinctive object. A ceremonial pipe, broken cleanly in half. Its two pieces laid side by side on the desktop. "A rider brought this an hour ago," Miller explained. "Came from a trading post 30 miles north. The owner recognized it as belonging to Thomas Parker." Reynolds leaned forward, studying the broken pipe. "I don't understand the significance, sir. The trader said Parker commissioned this pipe specially. Planned to present it to Chief Running Bear as a peace offering." Miller's fingers traced the clean break. "Breaking a pipe like this is a Comanche declaration of war." "Comanche?" Reynolds frowned. "But the tracks we followed were deliberately misleading." Miller fixed the lieutenant with a hard stare. "The trader also mentioned a group of Comanche warriors making trouble recently. Their leader wears a necklace of Apache beadwork. Claimed he took it from a man he killed." Reynolds shifted uncomfortably. "You believe Comanche raiders are trying to incite conflict between us and the Apache?" "It wouldn't be the first time." Miller returned the broken pipe pieces to his drawer. "I've sent word to Captain Davis to suspend all operations on Apache land pending further investigation." "With respect, sir, I still believe." A crack of thunder interrupted Reynolds, so loud the window panes rattled. Both men glanced outside as lightning split the sky directly overhead. "Believe what you will, Lieutenant," Miller said after the thunder faded. "But my orders stand. No soldier crosses onto Apache territory without my direct command." Reynolds saluted stiffly and departed, leaving Miller alone with the storm's fury outside his window. The captain sighed, returning to his desk. Thomas Parker had been a reasonable man, one of the few settlers who made efforts to understand the Apache rather than simply fear them. His death was a tragedy that went beyond the loss of a single family. It represented the unraveling of fragile progress toward. The broken pipe in his drawer was more than evidence. It was a symbol of how easily peace could be shattered, how vulnerable the future remained. Meanwhile, Strong Arrow sat alone in his lodge at the Apache encampment, the bone arrowhead still clutched in his hand. The council's revelations had shaken him to his core. His father, who had raised him on stories of Apache superiority and the importance of blood purity, had lied about their own lineage. The storm outside matched his inner turmoil. Rain hammered the lodge covering, wind threatening to tear it away entirely. The elders had retired to their own dwellings after the council, leaving Strong Arrow to wrestle with unwelcome truths. A shadow appeared at his lodge entrance. Grey Wolf, the young scout, soaked from the rain. "The chief asks for you," he said simply. Strong Arrow followed him through the downpour to Running Bear's lodge. Inside, the chief sat with 2 ravens and several elders. Between them lay an object that made Strong Arrow pause, a shattered clay vessel, its pieces arranged in a circular pattern. "Do you know what this is?" Running Bear asked. Strong Arrow shook his head. "It's called a peace vessel," 2 ravens explained. "Created when the first treaty was made between our people and those who became part of us." The old medicine man pointed to distinctive markings on the fragments. "These symbols represent the 5 tribes that joined to become the people." Strong Arrow knelt to examine the pieces. The vessel had been deliberately broken, then carefully reassembled without actually joining the fragments. "One of these marks matches the notching on your ancestral arrowhead," Running Bear said. "Your line came from the Eagle people, who fought us for 3 generations before joining us through marriage and adoption." "Why show me this now?" Strong Arrow asked, his voice rough with emotion. "Because you must understand what's at stake." Running Bear's weathered face was solemn. Morning Sky and Nighthawk complete an ancient ritual, one that renews the bonds that created our people in the first place. She was promised to me. Strong Arrow's fist clenched around the bone arrowhead. Our marriage would join our bands, strengthen our position against the whites. That path leads to destruction. Two Ravens' voice carried the weight of prophecy. Morning Sky has seen it. I have seen it. Even the stones and sky have seen it. Look at the storm that comes with their joining. As if in response, lighting struck nearby, illuminating the lodge interior with harsh white light. The thunder that followed shook the ground beneath them. What would you have me do? Strong Arrow demanded. Except that another man takes my promised wife, that ancient superstitions override tribal agreements. Running Bear reached for one of the vessel fragments, the piece bearing the Eagle People's mark, and pressed it into Strong Arrow's palm alongside the arrowhead. I would have you remember who you truly are, the chief said. Not just the son of Black Knife, but descendant of those who chose peace when war had failed, who found strength in joining rather than remaining apart. Strong Arrow stared at the clay fragment, feeling its rough edges against his skin. His entire life had been built around certain beliefs about his lineage, about tribal purity, about his rightful place. Now those foundations were crumbling. The ritual they perform doesn't just protect us from immediate danger. Two Ravens added, it weaves new strength into the fabric of our people, as was done when your ancestors joined with ours. Outside, the storm's intensity seemed to peak, wind and rain and thunder combining in a primal symphony. Strong Arrow felt something shift within him, not acceptance, not yet, but perhaps the first opening to a different understanding. I need to see for myself, he said finally. To witness this ritual you claim is so important. Running Bear and two Ravens exchanged glances. That may be possible, the chief said carefully, but not as a challenger, only as a witness. Nighthawk and Morning Sky emerged from the inner chamber transformed. The ochre markings on their bodies had dried to a deep rust color, and though they had cleaned themselves as best they could, traces remained, visible reminders of their ritual union. Both felt the change, a connection that transcended physical presence, as if a part of each now resided within the other. The storm continues, Nighthawk observed, listening to the rain pounding the canyon walls outside. It will last until sundown, Morning Sky said with quiet certainty. Strong Arrow's jaw tightened, but he didn't immediately answer. Instead, he reached inside his shirt and withdrew a small object, a carved wooden eagle so old the details had been worn smooth by generations of handling. My mother gave me this before she died, he said. Told me it came from her mother's people, not my father's. His eyes met Morning Sky's. I begin to understand there are different kinds of strength than those my father taught me to value. It wasn't acceptance, not completely, but it was an opening, an acknowledgement that perhaps the rigid beliefs he had held were not the only truth. We should return to the encampment, Running Bear decided. Together, the people must see that whatever has happened here, we remain united. As they prepared to leave the canyon, Morning Sky touched the split arrow in her grandfather's hand. Which path will you choose? War or peace? Neither, the chief answered with unexpected certainty. I will bind the arrow together, creating a third path, one that honors what is valuable in both. The storm began to ease as they descended from the high canyon, though thunder still rumbled in the distance like a great beast, reluctant to depart. By the time they reached the valley floor, the rain had softened to a gentle mist that beaded on sage and juniper. At the tribal encampment, people emerged from their lodges, faces turned skyward at the strange weather. Many gathered, watching silently as Chief Running Bear led the small procession into the center of the camp. Nighthawk and Morning Sky walked side by side, neither touching nor apart, the faded ochre markings visible on their skin. Strong Arrow followed a few paces behind, his face unreadable. Whispers spread through the assembled tribe. Everyone knew Morning Sky had been missing, that Nighthawk had disappeared during the search. Now they returned together, changed in ways both subtle and profound. Chief Running Bear raised his hand for silence. "Tonight, the council gathers," he announced. "Until then, there will be no questions, no accusations." His authority silenced the murmurs. "Return to your tasks. The storm has done damage that needs repair." As the crowd dispersed, Grey Wolf approached carrying a large drum covered in stretched elk hide. Intricate symbols decorated its wooden frame. Lightning bolts, rain clouds, and stylized figures with upraised arms. "The thunder drum," 2 ravens said, nodding approval. "It is appropriate." The young men asked if they should perform the Thanksgiving ceremony. Grey Wolf explained, presenting the drum to Running Bear. "For the rain ending the dry season." The chief considered, then turned to Nighthawk. "The guardian should lead this ceremony." Nighthawk accepted the drum, its weight familiar in his hands. The thunder drum was brought out only for significant occasions, after battles won during severe droughts, before great hunts. Its deep voice was said to echo in the spirit world, calling ancestors to witness important tribal moments. "Prepare the central fire," Nighthawk instructed Grey Wolf. "Gather the singers and dancers. We begin at sunset." As preparations commenced, Morning Sky touched her grandfather's arm. "I should speak with you privately," Running Bear nodded, leading her to his lodge, while Nighthawk remained with the thunder drum, testing its voice with gentle taps of his fingertips. Strong Arrow watched them for a moment, then turned away, walking toward the horses gathered at the camp's edge. 2 ravens joined Nighthawk. "He goes to consider his path," the old medicine man said, nodding toward Strong Arrow's departing figure. "The council will not be easy for him, nor for us," Nighthawk replied. "What we've done breaks tribal law, even if it serves a greater purpose. Old laws sometimes must yield to older ones." 2 ravens studied the markings visible on Nighthawk's forearm. "The ritual, it showed you things, many things, past and future both." Nighthawk's fingers traced the drum's lightning symbol. "I saw previous guardians and bridgewalkers performing the joining. I felt their presence guiding us. And afterward, the connection remains." Nighthawk nodded. "I sense her thoughts, her feelings, not words but impressions, as if a part of her spirit now resides within me. As it should be." 2 ravens smiled, his aged face crinkling. "This is how it was described in the oldest stories, 2 becoming more than the sum of their parts." Throughout the afternoon, the encampment prepared for the ceremony. Young men cleared the central gathering place, women brought firewood, children collected sweet sage for burning. The mood was uncertain, a mixture of relief at the life-giving rain and apprehension about what had transpired in the hidden canyon. Near sunset, Lieutenant Reynolds and 2 soldiers appeared at the camp's edge. Grey Wolf intercepted them, then hurried to find Chief Running Bear. "The yellow-hair lieutenant demands to speak with you," Grey Wolf reported. "Says it's urgent." Running Bear emerged from his lodge with Morning Sky. Both looked troubled, as if their private conversation had covered difficult ground. "Bring him here," the chief decided. "But only him. His soldiers wait outside our camp." Reynolds approached alone, his uniform still damp from the storm. His eyes darted suspiciously around the busy encampment, noting the preparations. "What's all this?" he demanded. "A Thanksgiving ceremony," Running Bear answered calmly, "for the rain that ends our dry season." Reynolds frowned. "Captain Miller sends word. There's been a development regarding the Parker murders. We know already. Comanche raiders responsible, not our people. There's more." Reynolds shifted uncomfortably. "A rancher 30 miles north was attacked this morning. 3 dead, including a woman. Tracks lead in this direction." Nighthawk, who had joined them carrying the thunder drum, exchanged glances with Morning Sky. This was unexpected. Nothing in their visions had shown a new attack. "Impossible," Running Bear stated firmly. All our warriors have been here, searching for my granddaughter or repairing storm damage. Not all, Reynolds countered, his gaze shifting to Strong Arrow, who had just returned from his solitary ride. That one and his men were unaccounted for much of the day. Strong Arrow stiffened at the accusation. We searched the high canyon for morning sky. Convenient. The high country would provide excellent cover for a raiding party moving south. Reynolds's hand rested meaningfully on his holstered pistol. Captain Miller requests that you and your warriors return with me to the fort for questioning. The atmosphere tensed immediately. Nearby warriors moved closer, hands dropping to weapons. Two ravens stepped forward, placing himself between Reynolds and Strong Arrow. The moon rises full tonight, the old medicine man said, his voice carrying surprising power. No Apache would raid under such light. It reveals too much to enemies. Reynolds scoffed. Superstitions don't outweigh evidence. Truth outweighs both. Nighthawk interjected. He turned to Strong Arrow. You were with Chief Running Bear and two ravens at the hidden canyon when Morning Sky and I emerged. Before that you searched with your warriors. Strong Arrow nodded slowly, understanding Nighthawk was providing him an alibi. We were together since midday. Amidst this revealing display, Reynolds smiled coldly. I think Captain Miller will be interested to hear how you've been conducting pagan rituals instead of helping find those responsible for murdering American citizens. Strong Arrow moved suddenly, placing himself between Reynolds and the ceremonial circle. You dishonor yourself by coming armed to a sacred ceremony, he said, his voice level but dangerous. Leave now, and we will forget this insult. Reynolds laughed. You're in no position to make demand, especially you, a warrior who's lost his promised bride to another man. He gestured toward Nighthawk and Morning Sky. Tell me, does it sting to be so publicly humiliated? The lieutenant's strategy was clear, to drive a wedge between Strong Arrow and the others, to inflame tensions already simmering within the tribe. For a breathless moment, it seemed he might succeed. Strong Arrow's face darkened, his hand moving to his knife. Then, unexpectedly, Strong Arrow laughed, a genuine sound of amusement that startled everyone. You understand nothing of our ways, he told Reynolds, or of honor. He turned to face Nighthawk and Morning Sky. I have seen the markings they bear. I have witnessed the storm that came with their joining. Whatever personal claim I held is secondary to the welfare of the people. Nighthawk felt Morning Sky's surprise through their newfound connection. Neither had expected this public support from Strong Arrow. The lightning stone in Chief Running Bear's hand seemed to pulse brighter, its inner crystalline structure catching the firelight. Reynolds' face contorted with anger. Enough of this nonsense. I came to inform you that Captain Miller has authorized a full search of your territory, beginning at dawn. His hand moved to his holstered pistol. Any resistance will be considered hostile action. Before anyone could respond, a massive lightning bolt struck the center of the ceremonial circle, hitting the lightning stone in Running Bear's outstretched hand. Blinding light engulfed the chief as thunder crashed directly overhead, so powerful it knocked many to the ground. When vision returned, Running Bear stood unharmed, but the lightning stone in his palm had split in two, its halves glowing with inner fire. Reynolds and his soldiers lay stunned, several feet away, thrown back by the lightning's force. In the sudden silence that followed, two ravens spoke with quiet certainty. The ancestors have spoken. The joining is acknowledged. Dawn broke over the mesa, revealing a transformed landscape. Where yesterday the earth had been parched and dusty, today it gleamed with moisture. Desert flowers, dormant for months, had opened overnight, carpeting the ground with unexpected color, and at the spot where lightning had struck the ceremonial circle, a spring had emerged, water bubbling up from stone that had been solid for generations. Lieutenant Reynolds and his men had departed in the night, shaken by what they had witnessed. The lieutenant's final words, half threat, half admission, echoed in Nighthawk's mind. I don't know what trick you people played, but Captain Miller will hear of this. Now the tribe gathered around the new spring, watching in wonder as clear water pooled and began to flow downhill, creating a slender rivulet through the encampment. Two ravens knelt at the water's edge, filling a pottery bowl decorated with ancient symbols. "Healing waters," the old medicine man pronounced, lifting the bowl high, "born of lightning and prayer. The ancestors' gift." One by one, tribal members approached, accepting sips from the ceremonial bowl. First the elders, then warriors, women, and finally children. As each drank, two ravens marked their foreheads with a small dot of wet clay from the spring's edge. A blessing, a protection. Morning Sky stood with Nighthawk at the spring's source, both still wearing traces of the ochre ritual markings on their skin. Through their connection, they shared the same thought. The vision had not shown this, a physical manifestation of the protection their joining had created. "The waters run deeper than we can see," Morning Sky murmured, sensing the spring's underground channels extending beneath the earth. Nighthawk nodded, like the ritual's effects. Chief Running Bear approached, carrying the two halves of the lightning stone that had split during the ceremony. Overnight, these had cooled, no longer glowing within a fire, but still radiating a subtle energy perceptible to those with medicine power. "The council has spoken," the chief announced quietly. "What you did, breaking tribal law, performing forbidden ritual, would normally demand punishment." His weathered face softened, but none can deny the results. The storm, the lightning, now this spring, bringing life from stone. Morning Sky took her grandfather's hand. "And the soldiers, Reynolds will surely return with more men, perhaps. But they too will drink from these waters before any conflict begins." Running Bear's eyes held ancient wisdom. Water is life. Even whites understand this truth in desert lands. A commotion at the encampment's edge drew their attention. Grey Wolf was returning from scouting, riding hard. Behind him came a second rider, Captain Miller from the fort, alone and carrying a white flag of truce. The tribe tensed as the captain dismounted, but his manner was respectful rather than threatening. He removed his hat before addressing Chief Running Bear. "I've come about Lieutenant Reynolds' report," Miller began. "He claims unusual occurrences during last night's ceremony." Running Bear's expression revealed nothing. The rain brought many blessings. Miller nodded, his eyes moving to the new spring. "So I see." He shifted uncomfortably. "There's been another development. The ranch that was attacked. We've captured those responsible." He paused. "Comanche raiders, as you suggested. The same band that killed the Parker family." A ripple of validation passed through the gathered Apache, their innocence confirmed by the whites' own investigation. "Furthermore," Miller continued, "I've received orders from Fort Command. All troops are to withdraw from Apache territory immediately. Apparently Washington has decided your tribe's peaceful history warrants special consideration." Nighthawk and Morning Sky exchanged glances. This unexpected reversal aligned perfectly with their vision of the alternative path, the one where bloodshed was averted. Strong Arrow stepped forward, having listened silently until now. "And the boundary markers, will your people respect them?" "New treaties are being drafted," Miller confirmed, "with clearer terms, more land designated as exclusively Apache territory." He looked somewhat bemused, as is still trying to understand these sudden changes. "It's unprecedented." Two ravens approached, offering the captain the bowl of spring water. "Drink," the medicine man invited. "Waters of peace." Miller hesitated only briefly before accepting. As the clear water passed his lips, those with medicine power saw a subtle change pass over him. A softening, an opening to understanding. "Sweet," the captain commented, surprised. "I've never tasted water quite like this. It carries memory." Two ravens explained, of time before conflict, of how things could be again. As Miller departed with assurances of continued peace, the tribe returned to the spring. Children had already begun to play in the small stream forming below it, their laughter rising like music. Nighthawk found Strong Arrow standing apart, watching the proceedings with thoughtful eyes. "You spoke for us last night," Nighthawk acknowledged. "When you could have sided with Reynolds, turned the tribe against—" Strong Arrow's hand went to the bone arrowhead he now wore on a cord around his neck. Acceptance of his complex heritage. "I saw the lightning strike," he replied simply. "I am not blind to signs from the ancestors." He studied Nighthawk openly. "You would have made a powerful enemy. Instead, I choose to make you a powerful ally. And Morning Sky, do you resent what was taken from you?" Strong Arrow smiled faintly. "Can one resent losing what was never truly theirs?" He gestured toward the flowering desert. "Besides, the chief has suggested I might find common ground with his grandniece from the southern band. She too walks between worlds, studies with the white doctors while honoring our traditions." Before Nighthawk could respond, a cry went up from the spring. A tribal elder who had been crippled with joint pain for years was standing straight, moving his once stiff limbs with newfound freedom after bathing in the spring waters. "Healing waters," two ravens proclaimed again, his aged face alight with joy. The ancestors' blessing upon the people. As word spread of the spring's power, Morning Sky moved to Nighthawk's side. Together they watched as the first visitors from neighboring bands began to arrive, drawn by news of the miraculous waters. "This is just the beginning," she said softly. Nighthawk nodded, feeling the truth of her words both in his mind and through their shared connection. The joining ritual had created something neither of them had fully anticipated, not just protection from immediate danger, but a new center for their people, a source of healing and renewal that would draw the scattered Apache bands together as nothing had in generations. "The vision showed us what would be prevented," Nighthawk observed, "not what would be created." Morning Sky slipped her hand into his. "Perhaps some gifts are too beautiful for even visions to contain." 1 year later, the place once known only as the Hidden Canyon had transformed. The spring born from lightning continued to flow, its waters carving a slender path down the mountainside. Around it a new encampment had grown, not just Apache from Running Bear's band, but people from other bands and even neighboring tribes who came seeking the healing water. Morning Sky moved among them, her knowledge of both traditional medicine and white doctors' techniques, making her a bridge between different healing approaches. Her belly had grown round with child, the next generation of guardian blood mixed with that of a bridge walker. At the canyon's entrance, once accessible only through a narrow crevice, a wider path had been carefully created. Here, Nighthawk stood with Strong Arrow, overseeing the placement of the Unity blanket, a massive ceremonial textile suspended between carved posts. Elders from 5 different bands had worked through the winter to create it, weaving symbols from their distinct traditions into a harmonious whole. "The last section is ready," Strong Arrow announced, unfurling a length of fabric decorated with eagle motifs, symbols of his ancestral eagle people now openly acknowledged. Nighthawk nodded approval. The Unity blanket would serve as both physical marker and spiritual symbol of the new cooperation between formerly divided peoples. Where once there had been suspicion and competition for diminishing resources, now there was a tentative alliance centered around the sacred spring. "Your father would not recognize what you've become," Nighthawk observed as they worked to attach the final section. Strong Arrow's face, once perpetually stern, had softened over the months. "No," he agreed, "but my mother would approve." He secured the last corner of the blanket. "And my new wife certainly does." His marriage to Morning Sky's grandniece from the southern band had taken place during the winter solstice. The young woman, educated like Morning Sky but at a different mission school, had brought valuable knowledge of desert farming techniques that helped establish gardens around the new settlement. "The Comanche delegation arrives tomorrow," Strong Arrow continued. "Their chief is skeptical, but willing to drink from the waters. Former enemies becoming allies," Nighthawk mused. The joining ritual continues to ripple outward. Once the Unity blanket was secured, they descended to the main encampment where preparations for the next day's ceremony continued. Children from different bands played together, their differences in dialect and custom already beginning to blend into something new yet rooted in tradition. At the central lodge, larger than any in the former encampment, Chief Running Bear sat in council with elders from multiple bands. His health had improved dramatically after regular immersion in the healing spring, years seeming to fall away from his weathered frame. Yet he had begun speaking of passing leadership to younger hands, of a council that would represent all who now gathered around the sacred waters. Nighthawk entered quietly, taking his place in the circle. As guardian, his role had expanded beyond keeping ancient knowledge to helping interpret how traditional wisdom could guide them through rapidly changing times. Captain Miller sends word. Running Bear announced once formalities were complete. The new treaty has been signed in Washington. Our boundaries are officially recognized, including the healing spring and surrounding lands. Murmurs of approval circulated through the council. The relationship with Fort Davis had transformed over the months. Suspicion gradually replaced by cautious cooperation. Lieutenant Reynolds had been transferred elsewhere, a development many attributed to the spring's influence on Captain Miller, who had become an unexpected advocate for Apache sovereignty. There is more, Running Bear continued. The White School wishes to send students to learn about our healing ways, and the fort doctor asks if Morning Sky will instruct his medical staff. The worlds continue to intertwine, observed Two Ravens, now so elderly he rarely left his lodge. As the prophecy foretold, as council concluded, Nighthawk found Morning Sky at the spring's edge, her hands moving in practiced motions as she prepared medicine bundles for a family recently arrived from far to the west. The Unity blanket is complete, he told her, sitting carefully beside her growing form. She smiled, the happiness reaching him through their connection before it appeared on her face. Just in time for tomorrow's ceremony. Strong Arrow has grown beyond what I thought possible, Nighthawk admitted. He leads the treaty discussions with wisdom I never saw in him before. People become what circumstances and choices shape them to be. Morning Sky placed a hand on her rounded belly. As will our child, Nighthawk covered her hand with his. Through their bond, he felt the flutter of new life, strong, determined, already carrying traces of both their spirit. I've been thinking about names, he said. As have I. Her eyes held a teasing light. But I've seen which one we'll choose. Another vision. Assertant, she looked toward the setting sun, its light catching the Unity blanket at the canyon's entrance, making the woven symbols seem to dance with life. New dawn, for that is what we've created. Not just a child, but a new beginning for our people. Nighthawk followed her gaze to where the blanket caught the fading light. Beyond it, the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, the same stars that had witnessed countless generations of their people adapting, surviving, continuing, the same stars that would watch over generations yet to come. New dawn, he repeated, feeling the rightness of it settle in his spirit. For all that has ended, and all that now begins. Around them, the healing waters continued their gentle song, flowing from stone that had once been barren, nourishing land that had once been dry. Like the waters, the future spread before them, not without challenges, but filled with possibilities none could have foreseen before the day when at the grave site she had said, "I'm not pure anymore," and changed everything.